So I went from this to this. This is a song called The Rule. I recorded this back in 2013 with some good friends of mine. We got Andres Luengo on drums, Ricky Howard on bass, I'm on guitar, Dean Howard is also on guitar. We've got Jason Sawford on the Hammond and the synths. And of course, I'm doing the lead vocals and Ricky's doing the backing vocals. There will be multi-track in the description, or at least a link to it. I can't fit the multi-track in there. Imagine how long the description would be if I put all the multi-track in ones and zeros in it. 3 pieces of housekeeping before we start this beautiful mix. Everything is chaptered, so you can skip this. That was not the first piece of housekeeping, but a good point to make. Number 1, I will be putting out the second part of my questions video, which the first part was last week's video. I'll be putting that out next week because some people have asked some interesting questions, which I'm going to tack on the beginning of what I'd already filmed that got too long for the last one. So that is coming. Second point of the housekeeping. A friend of mine texted me just before Christmas and had watched all 6 episodes of 2020 Rendezvous, which is a mini-series myself and some friends made towards the end of the pandemic and through till 2022. There's only 6 episodes. It's pretty funny, or at least I think it is. It's also quite dramatic, and it's about a fake band that had a #1 single years ago and were doing a comeback, but then of course the pandemic hit in and no one could do any gigs. So please go and watch that. I will link that in the description. Give it a go. It really hasn't got as many views as we'd hoped, and I think that's partly due to the bad language and the YouTube algorithm. So if you're not frightened of a bit of bad language and you like band and music related humour mixed with some drama of the pandemic, then please go and give it a watch, because we put a lot of effort into that, and I'm very proud of it. And the third thing in this wonderful piece of housekeeping is don't forget to send me multi-tracks if you want me to mix them, because I'm really up for mixing stuff that is not my own stuff. Obviously, you have to give me the copyright to be able to do it, or share the copyright, should I say, to be able to do the mix and have it on my channel. But other than that, there's no restrictions. Just send me. I will put out files, send back to you, all for free. Now let's get on with the video. I've done pretty much nothing to this so far. Let's go to the computer and I'll show you how I've set it up. So on the multi-track, we've got 3 bass drum mics, 2 snare drum mics, a hi-hat, 2 toms, overhead and side. I was doing a kind of a Glyn Johns type setup for that one. And we've got stereo room. I've got bass low, bass high. We've got 2 mics on each guitar. I've got a condenser and a 57 on each guitar. So we've got my main guitar that will be panned left. We've got Dean's main guitar that will be panned right. We've got the intro and the verse 2 guitar, which is there. And we've also got the guitar solo tracks there. I've got a stereo pair of mics round the top of the Hammond and a mono one for the bottom. I've also just got a stereo pair of top mics for the Hammond second verse. That sounds absolutely great. We've got Jason's Nord and also a solo on the Nord. And then vocal wise, I've got a verse vocal, which is just a single vocal. And then the bridge and chorus, I've got a doubled of me and also a doubled of Ricky doing backing vocals. So far on this, I have put the Smart EQ on every single channel and just let it do its thing. It certainly doesn't actually EQ it in a way that I'd like it to be finished. I've heard it described that if you had an assistant sort of setting up the session for you, it kind of gets it that far, which does make things nice and easy. I've kind of grouped the drums as you're meant to do in the software. So I put the room at the back and the overheads and sides and the hi-hat in the middle, and then all the other stuff at the front. And I've also got auto align running on every single channel, which just kind of phase correlates everything. It's kind of magic in a box. Used to do it all manually, but now there's a bit of software. You can press a button, it just does it all. So yeah, at some point I think I'm going to do a video where I phase align the drums manually myself, and then also do it with auto align and see if auto align does it better and see if I arrive at the same values. So that will be an interesting video for the future. I've got silencer on the bass drum, snare drum and toms, which is a fantastic drum gate. If you don't have it, you should go and get it. And then on the vocals, the only other thing I've got is Smart DeEss, which is the first time I'm ever using it, but we'll see how that sounds. So at the moment, I've pulled it all up. I'm going to take out all my EQs on the desk. We're just going to listen sort of as it is coming off the computer. The intro riff, the first verse, the bridge, and the first chorus. So let's have a listen and see where we're at the moment.
Visible to touch, yet so uninspired. Has he had his day? Thankfully I've stopped fueling the fire that helps him get his way. Anticipating when there's nothing left to
So I think you'll agree that sounds pretty unmixed. You can get the idea of the song, you know, everything's in there, but it sounds pretty bad to my ears anyway. And we are going to transform it here and now, and we're going to start with the drum kit. So let me play the song again. I'm going to mute all the other channels. So at the moment we've got bass drum, snare drum. These are the toms, which are not playing at the moment. These are the overheads and the hi-hat mic. Although the overheads were set up in a Glyn Johns setup, it's kind of interesting. It's the only time in my life I've ever done it. They sound all right to me though. And there's the room mics. So before we get started or anything, I'm going to patch in some things. I'm going to use the hardware inserts on the computer. So let's go over there. So I'm going to group together the bass drum mics. And I'm going to group track to selected tracks. This only needs to be in mono. So there is our bass drums group. And I'm going to do the same for the snare. So now I've got them grouped together, nothing will have changed at all. We're still getting the same bass drum and snare drum being sent to the desk in the same way, but it means I can put effects and do things to all these three bass drums together. Now, we haven't really listened to the mix of these, and we haven't really listened to the mix of these either, but we'll come back to that in a second. Let's put some outboard over these. So on the bass drum, I'm going to, via my ADAT units, I'm going to put in the first EEQ, and I'm also going to put on the snare drum the ADAT EQ2. So basically I've patched in this first EEQ here into the bass drum and the second EEQ here into the snare drum. So let's just have a listen through to those, make sure they're all working okay. I've realised my send gains are high from something I was doing before, so let's bring them all down to 0 dB. But they both seem to be working quite nicely. So I've got a bit of a low shelf I'm putting onto the bottom end, right at the lowest amount. I'm pulling out a load of sort of 200, 250. Get a bit of click on that. I'm trying to EQ it with a bit of the room in, so it's not completely sort of just sort of EQing in solo, because sometimes you can really push it and then it doesn't work with the other instruments. So a bit of room in, maybe a bit of overheads. Let me reset the snare EQ. So around 200 hertz. Is something that's making the snare stand out there. But then you're getting a sort of a muddiness. So using the two parametrics, I'm going to boost the sort of the 200. And then boost, and then cut around the 500. Sort of a bit of an 8K shelf on the snare. So I think that EQ is clipping on the snare. So I'm going to come back over here to the computer and I'm going to just turn the send gain on both of those down to -2. Just take a couple of dB off the send gain on both the bass drum and the snare drum. I think I'm going to turn the gain down coming into the snare drum group. Just going to take 3 dB off it. So if I get in here with my phone cam, we can see on the bass drum there, I've basically boosted the top a little bit. I've also boosted some mids sort of around 1.5K. I've pulled out loads and loads of sort of 200 hertz and I've boosted the real bottom there. And on the snare, bit of a kind of an 8K boost, somewhere around 8K. And then I've cut a load of sort of 400-500. I've boosted a load of 200, and then I've got a little bit of boost at the bottom as well. It's probably somewhere around 100 hertz, just giving it some bottom end on there. So they're the two EQs. I've also turned the gains down going to them so that whatever I'm doing on the EQ there isn't clipping the ADATs on the way back. So let's look at some compression now for them. Seeing as I've got the EQs patched in via the hardware inserts, I can use my patch bay to add some more things into those chains. So I can come out of the output of the EQs and send to a compressor and then bring that back into the input of the ADAT. So on the bass drum, I think I'm going to use the first E-Dynamics, and on the snare drum, I'm not 100% sure because I really want to leave the B17 2As. I want to use the pair of 2As as a parallel drum bus. I usually use the Blueys, but this time round I'm going to try the Black Lion Audio 2As for my parallel drum bus, which means I could use one of the 17s for the snare drum, but I'm actually going to give the Warm Audio 76 a go on the snare drum because it is quite one-dimensional, but it's also quite trashy, and I think this song needs quite a bit of trashing. So let's patch those in. The E-Dynamics, the first E-Dynamics on the bass drum and the 76 on the snare drum. So we're coming out of the EQs into the E-Dynamics on the first one and out the E-Dynamics back into the EQ. And I've also got the Warm Audio 76 patched in on that one. Here's the Warm Audio 76. We're going to see what this sounds like on the snare drum today. Of course, I had it patched wrong. So what it would do is really drive that slow attack, fast release. So let's have a look, see what that's doing on the snare. I want to drive that snare a bit more. I want to hear what that sounds like compared to the 17 on the B17-2A. So let me unpatch the Warm Audio. So I've moved the patch to the first 17. Here's the first 17 there, and I'm going to see what that sounds like instead, because I wasn't overly impressed with the Warm Audio 76 there. It just sounded a bit bland to me. So that's now working on the snare drum. I've got the slowest attack and the fastest release. If I turn the release back, the release just gives it that snap that I'm looking for. And I don't know whether it's in my head, because I won't know till I listen back and do a proper comparison between the two. But the B17-2A just sounds a lot punchier and exactly what I was looking for. It's just giving me what I'm looking for straight away. So why fight it, you know? So let's get the toms in. Okay, so the bass drum and snare drum are a hell of a lot punchier. I haven't actually done anything in terms of mixing them on the computer. The bass drum in mic, the out mic, and the sub mic, which was actually a speaker, they are all just being sent at 0 dB or minus 3 dB actually to the bass drum group. If I feel the need to change the mix of them, I will, but at the moment I'm just leaving that as it is. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And what I'm going to do next is, via the magic of the Big Six desk, this second send here that I've got, I can actually send out of that into the pair of 2A compressors that I've got down here, and I'm going to bring them back on 9 and 10 on this line in here, so we get some parallel compression mixed in with the kit. Before I do anything else, I'm just going to get that set up. So for that I need 4 leads. So here I've got FX2, so it comes out these red and yellow leads there. They go out into the 2As, which are on my patch bay there, and this green and white lead there go up into the 9 and 10 line inputs. This here is the master send for this here. If I just turn all of these up and make sure they're post fader, that means that these will follow the fader positions. I may take some of the overheads and some of the room out of the compression group, but we will see. So if I play the drums now, we will get them going to the 2A. And we can see they are going to the 2A nicely. But they are not yet coming back in on this fader, because I need to press the button that's from USB. I need to take that off, and then it will be from the line in. So if I turn all them off, and we'll just listen to the 2A group. If I turn this up here, it will really push it to the 2A. If I turn it down, it will turn it off. So my meters are a little bit off there. They don't seem like they're 100% calibrated left and right. So I'm just going to run a test tone through the snare channel, which should be dead down the center. Going to do that by going to the snare drum group and loading up the test generator plugin. And I am getting the same amount of gain reduction pretty much on each of them. And they are coming up as pretty equal on there. So that's close enough for rock and roll. Do love the sound of 2As on drums, so let's mix them in parallel. The room out. I'll whack this EQ in on the toms, which will just boost the top, give it a smiley face, boost the bottom. Bit of mid out. I know it's a massive level jump, obviously, when I take the parallel compression out. Well, that's sounding pretty nice to me. Let's do some work on the bass channels. So I've got a sub bass going on. And then I've got a top end. So I don't want to do too much to the bottom end of the bass. I think I'm just going to use the compressor on the desk, just to tickle it a bit. And the top end of the bass, I'm going to try through the Warm Audio 76. Second time lucky, maybe, because it didn't really work for me on the snare. So let's put it on. In fact, I'm going to use a hardware insert on this. Back to the computer. So I've got the Warm Audio 76 patched in via a hardware insert. Let me get rid of that test generator and we'll have a listen to it. So I'm really burying the needle on the top end, and I've got a very fast attack and a very fast release. I like that. It's the mixture of the not so compressed bottom end with the over compressed top end. That's a good start. Let's listen to these pair of guitars here. So I think that's my guitar. That's Dean's. So I think I really want to skank up those guitars, and I'm going to use my Warm Audio 273 EQ, the Neve preamp clone, and I'm going to drive it a fair amount and give it some proper skank. And I'm going to patch these in manually to the insert points because I don't want to be worried about the return gain. Part of the reason that I did the drums using the insert points and not the insert points on the desk is because I'm going to get some drum reverbs later, and really I want the drum reverbs to be happening after the EQ and after the compression and everything, so it's better to use them as a hardware insert and then send and bring the reverbs out there. Whereas with the guitars, I'm not going to be doing that. I just want to patch in some inserts and drive them until they sound nasty, and then that will be wonderful. Let me get some different coloured leads. So I've patched them in down here. There's the insert points, and down here is my 273 EQ. Can't really see it because all the leads are in the way, but they are successfully patched in. So let's see what it sounds like. So I've really driven them. I've turned the inputs up quite a bit there, and I've turned the outputs down to compensate. And yeah, it does sound incredibly fat now. So this is what it was before. Put put the preamp in. I mean, it's almost to the point where it's sort of crackling and sounding absolutely filthy, but in the mix, I think that will sound great. That's without. And this is with. I'm going to EQ that first guitar a bit. So this desk EQ that I was just using on the snare there, that's happening after this EQ and the compressor. So this is kind of bringing back some of the treble and taking out some of the mids after I've done that process, because sometimes the compression can suck out a little bit of the treble. And to be honest, yeah, I could have the treble full up on there and still want to add a bit more on here. Okay, where are we up to at the moment? Let's I want to put a little bit of reverb on the drums. I'm finding the drums a little bit one-dimensional, and because I used the hardware inserts and I wasn't using the inserts on here, that means whatever I do with the EQ there and the compression will be transferred into the computer before it comes out to the desk. And that way I can put reverb on it and bring the reverb back on this 11 and 12 channel here. So let's move over to the computer and set up a drum reverb. I'm going to add an effect track. It's already there, the UAD pure plate reverb. I might not use that, but we will start with that. I'm going to send it out of SSL 2, 11 and 12. I'm going to call this drum verb. And if I center that now, it's certainly working. It's way too long. Low cut, bit of pre-delay. So I'm going to get the channel strip here, that's the drum verb channel strip, and I'm going to put the strip before the insert. So whatever I do on this EQ will happen before the pure plate reverb. I'm going to look at the Hammond next. So this Hammond here is happening in the second verse. And we got that by Jason was holding the chords down and playing voicings of the chords, and I was pulling in and out the drawbars while he was doing it, and that just sounds phenomenal. I mean, that is crying out for a delay of some sort. So let's go to the computer. I'm going to choose Delay Lab by IK Multimedia. And sort of quarter notes. I'm going to put the doubling on. High pass the delays, low pass a bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a software compressor after it just to make all the delays kind of merge with the sound a little bit more. So I'm going to choose the IK 76, the black 76. Fairly fast attack and release. So let's listen to that again. So I've also got an intro and a verse guitar going on. So let's have a listen to what's going on with the intro. So at some point I've already grouped these and put a little bit of delay on them. Thought I was about to do that, but I've already done it. I think I'll put a high pass on that. Bit of a low pass as well. Just sounding a bit too high pitched for me, that bass drum. So I might just try pitching the whole thing down a little bit. I'm going to grab the 3 wave files and just transpose them by a couple of semitones. See whether that sounds good. 3 semitones. Not sure that E-Dynamics is the right compressor for it. Let's try the other 17. So I've now got the bass drum and the snare drum going through the Blackline Audio 17s. Bring in that synth for the solo. Just realised I had the toms panned to the compression bus. I had them both panned to the left, which was a bit silly, but I fixed that now. Right, I'm going to add a touch of reverb, that drum verb, to the 2 toms. Right, let's work on the vocals. I have all the vocals here sent to this group, all vocals. But there's no compression, nothing nice going on at the moment.
Visible to touch, yet so uninspired. Has he had his day?
After the DeEsser, I'm going to send that to my Bluey, my first Bluey, Bluey 1, which is sitting up here.
Visible to touch, yet so uninspired. Has he had his day?
About halfway on the attack.
Thankfully I've stopped fueling the fire.
Not as tight on the release as it could be. Because I don't want to run that in real time, I've got 5 vocals on this and I want them all to have the same compressor on them. I've got 2 compressors, so I can run them 2 at once in practice, but just for now, because it's only 5 vocals, I'm going to move that hardware insert around and just bounce all of them off. So the easy way to do that is to just select them like that and go to Edit, Render in Place with current settings. And it will play through those vocals and record them back into the computer, which is excellent. So we've got 5 new vocal tracks now, and before I do anything else, I'm going to set up some effects for these. I want a short slapback delay for the verse, and then for the bridge and the chorus I want a longer delay and a reverb. And I'm also going to put a compressor across the whole vocal group. I'm going to use a software compressor across the whole vocal group. I'm going to use a UAD to a silver compressor. Okay, so we got all the vocals bounced through the Bluey 500, and we've also got some delays and reverbs and stuff like that on the vocals. So let's have a listen through to the whole thing on the desk and start balancing and using the desk EQ to just add a little bit top, take a little bit of middle out, all that kind of stuff, make things fit to each other. And I'm also going to whack in the G-Bus comp up here just to glue the whole thing together a little bit.
visible to touch, yet so uninspired. Has he had his day? Thankfully I've stopped fueling the fire that helps him get his way. Anticipating when there's nothing left to ride. Left to find out, thank you. Seal a premonition. Focus out and brand new what is true. This is an exception to the rule.
So the last thing I'm going to do patch-wise is I'm going to whack in this UVEQ here over the whole drum kit as a pair, because I think the drum kit needs some EQ. So I'm just going to use the insert point here on the second desk, the left-hand desk, what I call desk 2, because this is desk 1 and this is desk 2. If you haven't seen the video where I explain all the routing and everything, go and watch it because it's really good. But after this video, wait for this video to finish first. So yeah, I've just patched in the UVEQ.
To install the progress which controls our minds. Articulating.
High pass filter, bit of low cut. There's a load of mud round there. Harshness. Pull that out. Get some nice crisp top end going on. That's what it was. That's what it is. Right, I want a bit of delay on his keyboard solo. Let me close all these plugins. I'll make this ping pong. And then when it gets to this bit, I want to bring it down. I'll crossfade those like that. So when the singing comes back in, it kind of gets quieter.
For
Okay, at this point, I think it's kind of in a shape, and I would need to take an ear break and come back and start to tweak on it. But for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to do that. Let's just have a listen through to the whole thing. I might do a couple of tweaks, and we will call it a mix for now.
Visible to touch, yet so uninspired. Has he had his day? Thankfully I've stopped fueling the fire that helps him get his way. Anticipating when there's nothing left to exception to the rule.
So that is certainly getting there. I wouldn't call that finished. There are things that I would want to do once I've had an ear break, which I might well come back to in a bit. The first thing I would imagine, the bass drum and the snare drum, I'd probably duck the overheads and the room a little bit. So I'd set up a sidechain compressor so that when the bass drum and the snare drum hit, it just ducks the room and the overheads a little bit, because I think they're getting a little bit trashy. Maybe the overheads and or the room need a compressor of their own. I love what's happening coming through the parallel bus, but maybe they just need, every now and again something just jumps out on the overheads. Maybe it's more of a DeEss type situation where it's just a certain frequency band that needs attenuating, but I'd definitely be looking at that. Other things to look at are more carefully riding of the vocals. I think the verse vocals probably need coming up and the chorus vocals coming down. I wouldn't want to judge that. I've been sitting here, I know on the video it'll be a quicker amount of time, but I've been sitting here for over 2 hours now with this coming at me, so I would need an ear break from it. But in general, I think the levels, you know, the average levels are there, the average sounds are there, it's sounding nice. I might want to skank up this top end of the bass a little bit more. I've got it going through the Warm Audio 76 compressor, and it's not that it's not doing it for me, it sounds all right, but it sounds like it needs another layer of something, and maybe I need to put something like a amplitude on it and drive it a little bit more, give it some skank. So yeah, they're areas that I'm not happy with at the moment. They're things that I'm identifying. I want it to step up more, so when it comes out of the verse into the chorus or into the bridge and then into the chorus, I want it to step up. And on the master sometimes I'll just turn up each section by a dB and then bring it back down for the verse, so it always feels like it's going somewhere. But I think some of that could be done with automation. I could bring down the drum reverbs and maybe the overheads and rooms in the verse a little bit, so when it gets to the bridge, you know, I can bring them up and it can sound fatter and weightier. So there's lots of little things. I'm going to leave this set up on the desk, and I'm going to have a tweak of it either later on tonight or tomorrow with some fresh ears. But for the purposes of this video, I think that is very much done. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you agreed with what I did or thought everything I did was rubbish and would like to leave me a comment telling me so, please leave me a comment. The comments are always wonderful. I love answering questions. Remember, I'm an idiot. I know no more than anyone else. So what I'm doing here is just my opinion, and you are free to do what you want. Download the Multitracks, have a play, send me your mixes. And also, if you have Multitrack and you'd like me to load it up and have a play about with it on my desks and on my setup, and of course I'd send you all the files back that I generate, then please send me something. Like, subscribe, share, all of that stuff, and I will see you in another video. Goodbye.